Robert Vane, thank you for coming onto the Data Strategy Show. And it's great to see you, Robert. It's been
Thanks
a
for having
long
me back.
time.
It has been, yeah, a couple of years. Yeah. I was on series one, wasn't I?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What ruffled a few feathers on series one? Let's ruffle a few more, shall we?
Well, I'm all for that and happy to have you on the show. And so listen, Robert, what's been happening? Tell me, where are you? When we spoke last time, there's a lot of things that have happened in the data industry. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think data mesh was just kind of arriving, wasn't it? I don't know whether it's arrived or it's actually still trying to arrive or where it's gone to. I haven't really been on LinkedIn for about 2 years now. I was getting a bit
Hmm.
disillusioned, to be brutally honest.
Hmm.
There was lots of hype all there, lots of activity and not much progress. And as you know, at the time I was working on sort of my own stuff wider than that. So coordinating disciplines, so getting business architecture and data architecture and all these things together and trying to crack that sort of context and purpose nut
Yep.
that is so difficult to crack. So I was working on that a little, and what's behind me at the moment basically is some of that, the backdrop. Um, so yeah, I was doing that. The industry seemed to be spiraling out of control, I thought, in many ways, and lots of activity and not much actual progress. So I kind of dropped back a bit and just watched to see basically if any of this hype would blow over and then try and re-engage. And I think I only actually re-engaged when I saw your post a couple of weeks ago
Okay.
about operating models,
Ah,
which is something
yes.
very, very close to my heart,
Yes. Yes.
Um, so yeah, and all about the connection of disciplines. So that's when I
Hmm.
started re-engaging again. And I thought, well, it's about time to talk to Samir.
Well, I'm glad you did. So listen, let's just go back to a couple of things that you mentioned there. One was about business architecture and data architecture and so on and disciplines. Let's and then you talked about the hyperbole, etc. on LinkedIn, and it's just become an echo chamber in a lot of ways. And let's go back to business architecture. There aren't that many people who talk about business architecture
um,
um,
True.
at all. There's more talk about data architecture and enterprise architecture, but help me understand for those people out there. Firstly, actually, my goodness, I haven't really asked you to do that. But before we do go ahead on business architecture, why don't you just tell our listeners who you are and a quick 30,000 view of Robert Vane?
Yeah, so I've been in the IT industry since good grief, early 90s. So you
Okay,
could call me a
a
veteran.
veteran.
I've still got some dark hair left. Most of it's grey. Yeah, so I started off as a programmer, an Oracle programmer, back in the days. And it's interesting, slight sideways on there, but about 5 years into that, I came across this thing called Case Designer. Remember that Oracle Case Designer? It
Um,
was
I
it was
mm,
Oracle's tool that tried to basically generate out software basically from metadata. So,
right,
and that
right, okay.
I think Oracle sort of when
But
that was
might have
interesting.
been
That
a
was
bit
the first
early on.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
that kind of introduced me to I guess the whole concept of meta-driven systems, yeah,
right.
metadata-driven systems, or effectively architected systems, yeah.
Hmm.
Which is quite interesting. And then that fell by the wayside. I kind of then went into the more design roles and DBA roles and consulting roles, then into data, then into enterprise architecture. So I've kind of shifted left, should we say, down up the architecture tree to the
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not sure whether you call it the top or not, but basically the more kind of abstract and holistic views on these things.
Right.
Um, and as I flowed from developer to architect designer to data architect, and I kind of realized that the disconnection was important. The whole thing was very tribal. It was all very bipolar or
Hmm.
multipolar, basically.
Hmm.
Every single discipline seemed to be wanting to go its own way,
Right.
and enterprise architects were running around like mad idiots, basically trying to bring all this stuff together.
Hmm.
But for me, it just wasn't working. Um, so the whole sort of thought process, I guess, of the last 10 years is how do we do that? How do we actually get all these things to actually connect together and actually become more than the sum of the parts? Because at the moment, we just seem to be fighting each other. And then when you bring in basically delivery, project, IT delivery, and all these sort of things, that just introduces another wing that seems to fight against everything else. So
Yeah.
you have this constant disconnect that basically is just slowing everything down. And for me, that was why 80% of projects were failing, primarily, is because there wasn't an operating model that basically says, well, this is how we all work together. And every place I've been to, every place I've worked at since then, you arrive and there isn't an operating model. They're making it up as they go along. And obviously, Agile has taken, do we say, devalued design in advance and architecture, and basically it's gone for iterative approach. So that's another thing that's kind of devalued that initial thought process. And that was nothing to do with waterfall and Agile. This was just about basically architecting things well, and that kind of suffered from that. So I spent the last sort of 5 or 6 or so years trying to figure out how to actually bring these disciplines together, and more than that, who should be doing certain things and in what order, and more importantly, who shouldn't be doing certain things, because effectively they don't have the skills or the knowledge. They think they do, but they don't. Yeah. So there's certain things that basically certain people should do in a certain order and have certain accountabilities for, which just doesn't seem to exist within, I would say, 99% of IT department or architecture departments. It's all very hit and miss.
So let me go back to my question about business architecture. Let's talk about the fundamentals then. Let's talk about, why do we need this thing called business architecture? I mean, first tell me what it really means to you and why it's not talked about enough, but why it's essential to have this.
Well, it answers the question why. It's all about purpose and context,
Right.
So there's various aspects of that. I mean, people generally associate business architecture with process definition, business process management, which is really just a typical aspect. But business architecture is all about understanding that the motives, the assumptions, the macro environment that the business is operating in, the people that are in it, the roles that they do, how they coordinate each other, and how that whole system works. And it's nothing to do with data. Data is the exhaust of all that. Data pops out basically of these events and interactions and communications.
Yes.
And the other key thing as well is that business architecture should also define the language of the business that you operate on. And if the language of that business is woolly and not defined in the words of business, you've got no chance, because effectively you end up with 75,000 different dialogues trying to communicate with each other, and you just lose that ability to actually have that pragmatic competence basically between everything that's going on.
And so by that you're basically saying that the business has a language, and that is specifically around the way that they work and operate, and their purpose as a business to either make products or service customers, etc. What you're saying is that the business architecture side will help to support that language in a way that would give it context for systems, processes, and interactions between entities and people and so on, right?
It should define all that and completely in non-technical terms.
Right.
So it should have the ability of doing that. And the language, basically, business language underpins all that. But then you have to think about how you define priority. Which bits of the business do things in the right order, and why they're doing these things in that order. And when we, for example, are in a macro environment that's possibly on a downturn, how does the business adapt to that? What has to change, and how do those actors and those communications basically cope or adapt themselves? So all these things are business questions. And I think what's happened is that certainly over the last couple of decades is all those questions we've tried to answer them by basically dragging all the exhaust of this out of the application systems and then into data warehouses or whatever the flavor of the month is, and then try to recreate it all from the exhaust. And it's like, well, the exhaust isn't going to tell you what car it is. It's only going to tell you basically the mixture of the fumes, isn't it? It's not going to tell you that. So you have to have the ability to actually define what the business is, what it does, why it does it, how it's affected by your macro environments and micro environments. you have to be able to do that. Otherwise,
Hmm.
and you get to the situation at the moment where people are saying AI is going to fix all this. Well, it
Yeah.
can't, because we haven't actually got the language to describe what the business is yet.
Hmm.
And
See,
one of
now,
the
now that
conversations we
that is a big statement there, that we don't have the language to describe what the business is. Just unpack that for me a little bit, because I'm really interested to understand why we don't, when we've been doing business for so many years, decades. Um,
well,
you know,
the business knows what it does, but from a perspective of codifying that in a way that effectively an AI or well, it's not AI doesn't exist. A machine language algorithm of some kind of parameterizable piece of software can then interpret that as this is how it's all operating, and this is how we possibly could game theory a change. That's that's just not there.
mhm.
Uh, and in many ways, it's all about the development of architecture over a decade. We haven't invested in that area.
Yeah.
That area is woefully immature in 99% of organizations. I'm not sure whether you've seen the same thing, but it's not capable of doing that. And what I'm fearful of is that you end up with a situation where effectively, the machine language algorithms will just basically automate mediocrity. They'll just automate effectively something that we do really badly and just make it quicker. So you'll end up with bad things happening faster and more consistently,
Hmm.
rather than fixing the problem that we've actually got, which is we are terrible at basically modeling businesses.
Yeah.
We're terrible at it. We're too abstract. We just haven't got that language to actually create that digital twin of the organization. And for me, that has to happen first. I think we have to actually get much better at connecting all these disciplines together and actually having a something that is as close to how the business operates and its context and its purpose and its people and its the words that you use, all those things, something that's close enough to say we could pretty much take that model out of that business and recreate it over here.
Hmm.
We could pretty much do that. Yeah. um, and that's what the AI would need. It would need that level of information to actually go through the process of saying, well, how do we adapt and how do we game this? Because you can't game something when you have a very limited view of what it is. Yeah. Um, so I mean that's my feeling about it. I'm not saying it can't be done. It
Yeah.
certainly can be done, but there's lots of preparatory work that basically needs to happen
Hmm.
um, to actually make that, to give it utility. Otherwise, you just end up basically, it's like normalcy bias, isn't it? Basically, you end up effectively with a very very clever piece of code recreating bad architecture.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, that's my good feeling about the whole thing. I'm not sure whether you agree there, but it's a
Well,
great idea.
yeah, look, I think I think walking into many organizations, and working with the organizations that I have been doing for the last, you know, 10 to 15 years, just from working in the data area, I see that many, many times. And unfortunately, a lot of the way that things have been done, things have just got out of control. Out of control, I mean too many systems, too many different types of layers on top of those systems. Then you've got too many different approaches. You've got teams that are working, um, in silos and not really in a cohesive manner. So that's why for me the operating model is key. I'm very passionate about the operating model as well, and why it's one of those things where I see, okay, with all this chaos, maybe there is a way that we can bring this together in some way that can have impact, and will be able to deliver, on value, etc. Now, without re-architecting the entire business, which is what obviously is very difficult to do, how would you begin that journey? How would you begin that conversation? How would you help a CEO to understand, or, you know, maybe it's not the CEO that you're speaking to. How would you help an organization to move from that chaos? And maybe some organizations don't even think they're in chaos. Maybe they don't even know
Mm.
that they've got many multiples of
Both, yeah,
systems. And I think that's part of the problem, right? Because, the IT function and the data function, they're there sort of, making sure it's all kind of there and working in some way, and they're trying to transform data and bring it and move it from one area to the other, and trying to remember which business rule or logic applies to that, and can we push it back into a system, can we do, all of these things have been happening for decades. It's been
yeah.
just going on, and and we've gone through, as you said, the data warehouse, through to virtualization, through to the data lake, through to sorry, not even that, the Hadoop distributed file systems, through to the data lake, data mesh, lake house, all of this, these different
Invent your
terms.
own, yeah,
and,
yeah,
and which one is the best one? Who knows? But as you said earlier, so for me, yes, absolutely, data is part of an input and an output, and it's either based on a trigger or an event or a decision that needs to be made or a handoff, or whatever that might be, and that's all down to
mm,
business process. So for me,
yeah,
that is a business process output. So where have we
mhm,
gone? I mean, apart from all of the, we can ruminate on where we've gone wrong, and how all these new wonderful terms and concepts are going to help it. I don't know whether they will. That they will either exacerbate or they'll help some of it mildly. But where can we make an impact to help an organization see this is what we need to do, and this is how we're going to get there? And I'm going to put that to you in terms of you're the man who's saying it's all kind of
mm.
gone to pot. What do they need to do?
Interesting one because there's tailwinds and headwinds there, isn't it? So you may have noticed probably a couple of years ago that I came up with this acronym called CADS,
Hmm.
um, which was basically an attempt to try and open people's eyes that effectively the IT industry is a cabal. But it's invested basically in its own future. It's certainly gone that way, and there's very very large multinational money, and number of organizations that basically are vested in status quo, shall we say? And
Hmm.
this is something that I guess over time I've kind of realized more and more that basically this is happening. Yeah, so I got this acronym called CADS, which effectively is the consulting data software industrial complex, shall we say? The this complex is advising business business, um, and that advice, you know, is leading to 80% failure.
Okay.
So at
Yes.
some point
So
you've got
yeah. So we've seen all the.
at some point
I
you've
yeah.
got to break the circle. You've got to break the circle, and I guess the tailwinds that you basically want is to get rid of these kind of negative feedback loops that where effectively the industry keeps inventing new stuff, the new advice comes in, but you spend time basically trying to adopt that, it doesn't work, then you go on to the next thing, and all this hyperbole and just keeps basically just wasting money. Well, that's
Mm.
fine basically when you're in a macro environment where debt is cheap. But over the next 10 years, basically, with interest rates high, you haven't got money to waste on these sort of things. The tailwinds that you basically need is for certain discipline and business architecture and architecture need to step up into the plate on this, and they just need to start doing the day jobs.
Mm.
Their day
What
job
does
is
that
to
mean?
document the enterprise.
Okay.
Their day job is to document the enterprise and to understand it. We've got to a situation now where, yes, it's probably going to take 2 to 5 years of constant effort, day-to-day effort, to basically create, to document the enterprise in a way effectively where you can get utility where an AI can pick it up. It's going to take we're getting to that sort of level, but it needs to happen because the more you don't do it, the more you just end up in the status quo. You've got to break the circle, and people don't take architecture seriously because they can never answer the question. The reason why they never answer the question is just that because they don't understand, they don't document what's there. Yeah, and you get these cyclic loops basically where you have a situation that doesn't improve because nobody really knows how the business works.
So it's that
And
age-old problem then of not knowing what the business does, how they function, and how they
yeah,
work.
yeah.
And what you're saying is that most architecture teams are not really positioned in that way,
Well,
or
they've been turning to mini consultancies, haven't they?
right.
Pretty much. So they give advice basically at a very, very abstract level. But what they're not
Mhm,
doing is actually their day job, which is being the custodians of the architecture of the enterprise,
mhm, mhm.
which means you've got to document it.
So is there also a level of confusion for the business folks who are having to deal with now they're having to deal with an enterprise architect, a data architect, a solution architect, and soon a business architect, or maybe they already
Mm-hmm.
are. So how do they work across these four disciplines who all have architecture on the back end of their title, and are all brought in, on very large complex programs, which, as you said, and there is this 80% factor that most
Yeah,
of the new concepts when they come out, everybody says now. I'm reading stuff online which says now between 60 to 80% of AI projects are failing and blah blah blah. It's the same old, right? We hear the same old
yeah.
statistic. It's coming from the same companies as well, right?
And it's the
Um,
same root causes. It's the same root causes, which is the thing. If you have basically an operator model which connects together those disciplines and is one that is refined and basically works, all these disciplines work together and can present a common um, view to the
so
executive, which
okay.
effectively is the architecture. This is design.
Hmm.
This is how we deliver it all. It works. If you have those things there, and then that can act on a a should we say an enterprise architecture that is as much as possible representative of what's there, then you can start moving forward.
Okay, so I'm a CEO, right? I've got a CIO or a CTO, and I've got a CDO. I've got an enterprise architect. I've got data architects in the CDO's camp. I've got enterprise architect aligned with IT. I've got a solution architect, probably aligned in IT as well. And now I've got this thing called business architecture. Yeah, I've got these guys. How can I, as a CEO, understand or be told differently, or really be described as to what these people should be doing for the company in order for me to be able to drive out my revenue targets, my growth objectives, my cost savings,
Mm-hmm.
and then the fact that I'm being told as a CEO that what they're doing doesn't map to the business, doesn't really describe or model the business. I mean, I would be scratching my head thinking, what on earth is going on? So either no one is telling the CEO what's happening or the C-suite, and everybody's just covering things up and saying, no, 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 everything's great. We've got this kind of nice architecture. We've got this platform going in there, and we've got this, bunch of stuff, this
Yeah,
insight being delivered there, and and then but there's no value being delivered, maybe because people are now talking about that there's, or not now, but for a while. So just describe really, really simply for a CEO out there listening to this, you know, what is it that they need to understand about the practicalities of these principles that we need to get in place before we can really start to extrapolate and use AI effectively going forward. You talked about digital twins. They people have been spinning up digital twins, etc. So what is it that they need to really understand practically for them to say, okay, I get it now. So actually, we're doing it all wrong, or where do we need to start that conversation?
yeah, interesting one. A number of times I've basically started off with saying, look at every single other business function in your business. So look at your finance department, your marketing department, your whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it
Mm-hmm.
is. Your product department. They have an operating model. They have processes. Yeah, they may not be completely optimal, but basically, they are refined over time.
We have,
And they have,
Dan, you're talking about business processes.
yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So I'm talking about the business functions now. So
Yeah.
if IT wasn't, then.
So let me ask you
Sorry.
one other thing just
So
there.
yeah,
With business processes.
The main point is the main point is they have all sorts of processes and they revolve around the system of record.
Right.
Okay, which is the important point.
Yep.
You wouldn't expect basically a finance function of a multinational to run in Excel.
Yes.
Yeah, you wouldn't. You would have a system of record. You would have
Yes.
staff. You would have people basically making sure that that was accurate, up to date. Because there is a reason. Because if you don't do that, then basically the financial authorities will basically hold you over the cold, and you'll get fined. Yeah. So it's incentive. We just do not apply that to IT. We are not consistent in how we do that. So IT basically is. There's no other business function that is allowed to run the way that IT runs.
Okay, this is what I hear quite a lot, and this is what I see quite a bit. Okay, when I hear from other people, and I've had experience of this firsthand. When I go into an organization and they say we'd like for you to come in and help us with our data strategy, create one, or we'd like to work, or we'd like you to help us with describing, creating, and implementing our operating model. One of the questions I ask them is, could you give me all of your documented business processes? And oftentimes, I feel that most people are shifting in their seats saying, don't know where they are.
Yeah.
So isn't that a fundamental problem?
It is. It is. And you can't, a CEO cannot expect an IT function to have utility without a system of record that basically describes what the IT IT is.
So
from effect,
So if I'm a finance function, I know that I have my, specific cycle of payments or specific cycle of accounting or specific, and they are all process based. You get, you get invoices, you have to, pay for them, and there's a process around that. So surely that's already in a system somewhere, as you say, the system of record. So that will have a mapping somewhere. It will have a bunch of fields that need to be filled in. It will generate a bunch of output, which will be data or reports or whatever it might be from that system. So
we're not saying that it's perfect. Well, because applications are very good at basically not supporting business processes because they're designed for the common denominator. So all these things can be improved. I mean, a business process management platform probably could do the job better than just a set of applications that are just talking to each other, because it has that way of binding together the flow and the logic and the business rules basically better than an application could, because applications generally design on.
But the application is based only for a specific area, not for the holistic view of it. That's why.
That's right, and they tend to have validation, which is very lax, and people can basically enter data in their own way, and basically there isn't that kind of thing. So applications aren't particularly the best medium, should we say, for quality. There's ways you can basically do that with enhancing that with business process management infrastructure on top of that, so it actually builds a sort of business rules in and basically does that. But that's quite rare for that to happen.
It's very rare because we've been using the data warehouse as that.
Yes, exactly. So the idea is that you drag everything off the database into the data warehouse and you try and recreate that context. Well, that's impossible.
Well,
because the exhaust of those business processes doesn't represent the business activity that created it. It partially represents it, but it doesn't fully represent it. You lose the context. And as soon as you start moving things and restructuring things within a data warehouse and normalizing them, you get even further away from the truth. So
Right.
so downstream effectively, people say, well, clean data, and let's clean the data in the data warehouse. If you left it where it was, it would be clean. It would be actually cleaner than what you've got, because effectively you've taken it out of its context. And this is
And we
where
can,
business architecture is again.
yeah.
So the business architecture should be able to wrap the context around that activity, that business event that effectively happened. You should be able to answer the 6 questions, who, where, why, what, how, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for everything that happens. And if you can't do that, if you basically only have what, it's very difficult to actually then recreate the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why you need that synergy. You need all the architectural disciplines and to coordinate with each other. And you can't just basically build a knowledge graph and say job done. It doesn't work that way, because you're looking at it from a data architecture perspective. You need to these disciplines have their own wily ways, and they just need to connect together. And again, we're back to operating model again.
Mm-hmm.
How is the architecture of the organization defined, recorded, kept up to date, and interact with each other? So effectively, whenever you see a piece of information, those 6 questions. You can answer those 6 questions. You know exactly what the business triggering event that basically created it. You know exactly what happened, the reason, who did it, why, where, at what time, and what sequence was that with the things that might happen before, what happened after, all these things that you need to know. Now, that's just a case of for me, I might be oversimplifying it, but if you have the right tools and you have a commitment from the broader architectural community to basically get their acts together and actually get this stuff documented, you've got a fighting chance.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you can then go into the wishful land of effectively saying, okay, let's go through the process of automating out most of IT out of this picture. So this is where you bring in your machine learning and your low code and all these things to say, look, rather than hiring 250 developers to do this, most of this can be generated because we have the digital twin, and all we're doing is changing this small amount of it. So it's become a perpetuating negative loop, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just not fixing itself. And
Have you?
the last thing the industrial complex wants to do is automate itself out of business.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, we're already discussing that, and we're seeing a lot of people talk about AI and how it's going to, put people out of their jobs, etc. Um,
Yeah, yes, AI has a bias issue. AI can only automate what already exists.
mhm.
So if things are done badly, and or there is implicit bias or disconnection between these sort of disciplines, then all it can do is replicate that. It can't fix it. It can replicate it. It can create bad architecture faster
I like that,
and more
bad
consistently
architecture faster.
and more consistently.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And AI, you need to teach. You need to teach an AI how to do this. And
You need to
to do
teach
that,
it. You do. You need to train
you
the models and so on, and then hopefully they can do a lot of reinforced learning. They can do,
yeah.
over time they'll be able to learn without any intervention at some point. But what you're saying
Mhm.
is you need to have that base architecture
An
in
AI,
place.
an AI isn't going to take you from maturity level 1 to maturity level 10,
Mm,
because it doesn't know the route to get there. I mean, it can keep trying, and it may well go sideways, but you can't underestimate the amount of knowledge an AI would need to understand what a business is, what it does, all its different functions,
See,
their
I'm amazed at that
procedures.
at that statement. I'm amazed at literally that statement because you'd think that you know businesses are fairly simple beasts. They
Well,
have
they are.
customers, they have suppliers, you know,
They are.
they build
You're,
products, and all of the ways and means that they do that should be fairly um evenly, based in terms of the processes and understanding of that. Um, you look at any business today, you could probably model it and understand it, we're just by talking to, one or three or five people up and down the business. And you could probably say, yes,
Yes.
now I've got an understanding of that. And maybe some people can do that faster and quicker than others. Maybe some people overcomplicate it. So
I think getting to the stage where I think what can happen is, should we say, human assisted architecture may well be the first step towards it. So,
mhm.
effectively trying to make the the gathering of that information much more streamlined. But it will still have to be reviewed, and it's you're completely right. Business fundamentally, a retail organization is a retail organization. So yes, 99% of retail organizations will operate in the same way. But
Mm.
you have completely you have different departmental structures, different role assignments, and different people with different skills. You have different you know priorities in terms of what you're selling. So it's not a one. It's never going to be one size
No,
fits
no, no, it
all
won't be. But
approach here.
fundamentally,
And what I'm saying is that
yeah, go on.
so the AI would have to understand effectively that the sort of the product area within an organization. It would have to understand what the products are, what who they're for, how they're used, the reason why certain products basically are there, not there, what effectively that business does. So effectively, you might well have a situation where clothing retailing is going through the floor, and therefore you're not making any profit. So the AI can't basically say, well, start selling lawnmowers,
Well, no, but
because they are profitable at the moment. I mean,
well, yes,
there are
but
boundaries. Yeah.
the sophistication of these models will absolutely become, over the next 5, 10 years, they will increase in terms of sophistication, and we've seen how quickly they've gone now, and sorry, how quickly they have progressed now. So, in my mind, maybe we are at a point where, if we think about it, maybe an AI can orchestrate that. Maybe it can be set out as like an AI. You could have an AI business architect. You don't need an individual, but you can that AI could go and start crawling around the ins and outs of those systems, then putting that language and that construct and those different roles and understanding the way the business works, and therefore be able to abstract that information and say, I've got a blueprint now, and therefore it will say to, it could
I think that
start
will
doing that.
happen. I
Mm.
think that will happen. I think what I'm saying at the moment is that we don't actually have the architectural language to train the AI to do that, and two, if it tries to learn from existing examples of how we
I
do
get
it,
that.
yeah.
I get that bit, but surely we have, so for example, you talk about business architecture. Now it's obviously a discipline that's been around, and not many people know about it. And there is I believe there is a business architect guilds, and
Mm,
they have their own,
they're very quiet
yeah,
for some
they
reason.
are
I don't
very
know why.
quiet. But maybe they're doing stuff in the background, and
Possibly.
maybe they're building, collateral up to help them get that view out there. But surely part of that collateral should be saying, let's document what a business does. Let's document what businesses do in their infinite, different guises. So let's map a retail organization. Let's map a chemical organization. Let's map a farmer organization. Let's map an oil and gas, and
Can,
you
can be
know
done.
it
Can be
can be
done.
done, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that's the benchmark that we start from, and then suddenly that's fed into an AI, and it's the algorithm. And look, I know I may be talking 5 or 10 years from now, but surely we can start to lay the foundations of that now and
Yeah.
say, hey,
100%.
we can describe what the language is. We can describe how it works. We can describe your six questions, and then we can feed that into a model that can then start to learn and adapt and build on those 6 questions and start to then say, as you said, we're not actually, because what I want essentially, if I was the CEO, is I'd want to have an AI CEO, digital twin that is,
Mm-hmm.
awake
Mm-hmm.
24 hours a day,
Yeah,
trawling, looking at all the competitors, understanding the landscape, where the markets are going, what's happening, and then, and while the CEO is sleeping, and when the CEO comes into the office, suddenly they are presented with that 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 intelligence that they need to maybe
mm-hmm.
make the decisions that the AI can't do, because they still need human assisted decision making. So
Yeah.
that's
The
where
problem is
I'm.
choice, as Neo says in the Matrix. The problem is choice, as Neo says in the Matrix. Yeah.
maybe,
Um,
maybe they don't give them the choice. Maybe the AI CEO makes the decision overnight and sends the
no,
real
that would be
CEO.
frightening. That would be frightening. Yeah. Yeah, it's all completely possible. I think my main issue here is that I don't think we've developed the operating model to actually train the AI to do that with enough utility to not make fundamental
And
mistakes.
enough understanding of the,
Yeah.
the, the, the base
So
knowledge that it
so
needs.
yes. So if we were able to direct an AI effectively say a digital twin of a retail organization, um, as applied to 50 of them. So
Mm.
you've got a pretty good sample. So we could actually figure out what the commonalities are, what the differences are, what's driving the differences. You've got a fighting chance at that point of basically saying the AI might start understanding basically what's going wrong and how to fix it.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
based on how you can parameterize that digital twin and
Hmm.
how you can feed it into that AI so it effectively understands what's going on. Um,
Have
will
you
that
have
happen
you
in the next
seen
five
have
years?
you seen
I'm not sure.
anyone
I'm not sure.
have you seen anyone come close to doing this at all? Has any organization ever been able to build anything as close to what you're describing?
Not that I've seen. I mean,
No?
obviously, I've been working on the way of doing that. But nobody's using it at the moment because it's so. I would say it's very difficult to actually go, as you said before, go into a CEO and say, look, here is your combined operating model for all your architecture, which can basically make you understand it all, and literally you can replicate, you can drop that retail organization, create another one next door, effectively it'll look exactly the same. Um, you know, that's what I've been basically moving towards creating, just because I've had so much experience of all the different disciplines and I know how they get
Mm.
together. So
Hmm.
um,
Have
the
you gone out? Have
the
you
issue
gone out to some of the, these institutions, and maybe Business Architecture Guild, or I don't know if there's one for the enterprise architecture, or.
yeah, I did reach out. To be honest, I didn't get very far because you have to get beyond the tribalism first. You have to get beyond
Mm.
the you have to persuade basically even architecture that working together with all the different architecture disciplines is a good thing to do.
Mm.
Now you would think
Wow.
that would be common sense.
Yes,
You
exactly.
would think that would be common sense, but I've got into organisations where I've said, right, okay, right. Working on data strategy, excellent. I think we need to. I'm going to reach out to the enterprise architects and the business architects to basically, run it past them, see if they've got any input, and see how they can add to it, etc., etc. And it's either we haven't got business architecture, or they don't talk to us, or the enterprise architects are trying to figure out what tool to buy,
Right. Yes.
and they won't talk to you for the next five
Yes.
years because they're too
Yes.
busy. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, and it's those sort of things that basically mean that that negative doom loop basically never gets fixed because
Mm.
nobody goes, and there's no chief architect or person within the organization that says architecture, get your act together,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and at least do your day job and document all this.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
that's the
And
main
that's a tough message.
challenge here.
It's a tough message.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
tough message. Yeah. And a CEO is more likely to basically bring in the big consultancy, and they'll give you a playbook, and we all know basically what happens to most
Yeah.
of
Where that
those.
ends.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and hence he went there basically with a solution, with a perpetual non-solved solution, yeah, a non-solved status quo. Um, at some point, we just got to bite the bullet and start doing things as we should be doing them. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the day job of an architect to basically understand the business, document it, and be the custodian of it. I mean,
It's as simple as
you,
that.
you wouldn't build a building without effectively an architect creating detailed architecture
Yeah, and
documentation,
schematics and so on. Yeah, absolutely.
schematics and everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The design of the building and its purpose and the reason why that space is this, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that happens first. Yeah. And you just wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen.
And
You never get past.
and fundamentally, what you're describing is that typical challenge of going out and buying technology, implementing it, and then worrying about how to stitch it together, or worrying about how the architecture then works. And that's typically been what I've seen.
Well, if an architecture got together and as a set of disciplines and says and came up with, in theory, their operating model, the issue we've got is they can't buy a tool to basically fulfill it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it just doesn't exist,
It's
and
well,
a lot
as you said, it's
many people have actually
non-existent.
said, many people on LinkedIn have basically said, well, this is, when I've been talking about basically coordinating these things together, they've said, well, there's nothing that exists to do that. Okay, so let's get together as a unified set of people and create the leading thing. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Let's
But
fix our own
but
problem.
didn't you say that back in the 90s there was, this thing called case design or whatever that
Oh, that
was
was very
almost.
that was very simple. But that was in the client server days. So
Yeah.
effectively, 99% of applications were incredibly simple,
Mm,
visually very very simple, and they exist effectively in Oracle database and a set of forms and menus. Yeah, that was your application. So this
right.
thing used to basically take in metadata and spit those out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the past, I've built stuff that basically could analyze the database and effectively generate out a web-based version of that, from the contents of the database. I mean, that can be done. I mean,
Mm,
it takes effort, but it can be done. But we're talking about, when we're talking about large organizations, we're talking about a different level of detail that
yes.
you need.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you
Absolutely.
also you also need all those angles. You need those 6 questions asked, because as soon as you can't answer one of those questions, then the business loses confidence.
Yeah.
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 Why,
Which
why
is
was that data? Why was that data created there? No idea. Well, maybe you should find out before you have the meeting. It's we've just got to break that circle. We've got to break that
yeah.
circle and start actually biting the bullet and actually doing our day jobs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, it's a hard message. It's a hard message, but it's got to be done.
Yep.
Got to be done.
Well,
How many data warehouses are out there that basically are undocumented?
there's loads, and I've been into organizations where they've got instances of SQL, at least 300 of them, or
Mm.
more. So and one had 600 and they brought it down to 300, some close enough to 300, but still, it just doesn't make sense to me that there's all of that spiraling out of control. And then you've got Excel on top of that, which I
Oh, yeah,
don't
plus
know.
Shadow IT.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And you'll have shadow AI soon, and you'll have, no doubt that as a construct in organizations. Um,
Yeah,
so it's, as you say, it's a tough message. Um, that
it
architects
is. It is. It is.
need to hear. Um, Hopefully, we can get a lot of engagement from this, and
I hope so. I'll probably be lynched next week.
well, look,
How
it's a
dare you
voice.
say that? How,
You've
how
you've
dare
got
you
to
say
have
that
your
about?
voice.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's just
and
what I've noticed. I've just noticed that, as being an architect for the last couple of decades, pretty much. They called us solution architects. They called us designers in those days because we weren't. Not everything basically had architect after the name. We were called designers. But
I didn't
you
know
know,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Solution architect, I think, is a fairly new one. We were just,
Right. Okay.
developers, designers, architects. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
you know exactly what you were doing. You were designing the physical stuff. Yeah. So it's interesting, but I think we've got the situation now where if we want AI to actually work within the corporate space, we need to get our act together, basically, from an architecture's perspective. Otherwise, AI has the potential to basically be incredibly destructive. Because we can't train it to do the right things because we haven't actually defined what the right things are. That operating model, it's so key. I mean, that's why I re-engaged in
Yes,
LinkedIn a little
in the
while ago.
conversation.
When
Yeah,
you started
yeah,
talking, when you started talking about operating models, I said, look, yeah, yes, that's what's missing.
yeah. And I've
What's missing
seen
is
that in most organizations, the operating model is not reflected in the way that they operate. It's not reflected in their processes. It's not reflected in their teams.
yeah.
And part and parcel, I attribute the 80% failure rate to a lot of the operating model stuff. You know, and
100%.
that's if you could organize that as an operating model, you would have less of an 80% failure rate, or whatever the failure rate now is, because who knows? You
And you
know,
would do much more things much faster as well. I mean,
exactly,
yeah.
faster, correct.
Faster,
And there'd be
more accurately.
more cohesive. You know, there'd be better language spoken between lots of people. You
Yeah,
know, and it comes with great benefits, but I don't think people really understand. I mean, this is what I say. My view is that the operating model is what makes the strategy real. That's the way I
yeah.
put it.
Mm.
And effectively,
You got to think that the data strategy is the same as the delivery strategy is the same as the business
correct,
strategy. It's all
correct.
it's all tentacles of the same thing.
Yeah, and you're right. Your data strategy should really be embedded in a business strategy. A business strategy should be what you should be looking at, and it should have every single pillar in there that you need to describe how you're going to do what you're going to do for the business, and what enablers you're going to have that are going to help to support the business drive its objectives, goals, outcomes, results, etc. And that's
Mm.
where I see so even the abstraction of a data strategy. That's why I luckily come from a business background, so I kind of push that data strategy back into the business view. But there are many data strategies I see are just pure technology data strategies. They're not really
Mm.
actually doing much in terms of pushing or knocking on the door of the CEO and saying, "Hang on, I'm going to
Yeah.
help you, increase your revenue by X." It's just hey, let's put another platform in, and
Well,
that's
yeah,
that's what
and
annoys me
again,
slightly.
that's why I came up with the word CADs
Yeah,
because that's where it's coming from.
yeah. Well,
The CAD
Robert,
the CADs basically the dirty rotten scoundrels.
well, Robert, it's been fantastic to speak to you. We
Great.
have gone from the age-old concepts of business processes to renewing this view on business architecture, and unfortunately, what did you say? AI will spin up just bad basic architecture. You probably said it more
Faster,
eloquent. That's
faster, and hugely more consistently. But basically, it will basically repeat what we do, and what we
right.
do at the moment is 80% failure.
Yep. And on that note, I thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
I look forward to loads of commentary and engagement on this podcast. I really do. But
Yes,
thank you
I'm
so
just going to
much.
run away and hide now. Going to run away and hide.
No. We should have a healthy conversation about it all, I
We
think.
should do. We should do.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
should
we
do. Yeah.
should. We should.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Robert. Take care.
Bye.